Hello, I'm Zetta Thomelin from the UK Confederation of Hypnotherapy Organisations, and I'm here today with my fellow director, Maxine Bryce, today. Hi, Maxine.
Hi, Zetta.
Um, we were going to start by talking about performance anxiety and perhaps stray a little bit into performance enhancement because they're kind of a bit interrelated. We're recording this at the time of the World Cup, and I can't think of a greater performance anxiety than standing there having to take a penalty that your whole country is depending upon. So obviously, sport is an area where there is a lot of performance anxiety, and there are chances of improving your performance. But we've also got doing that presentation to your boss or a seminar group. What sort of areas are you treating for performance anxiety, Maxine?
Well, it might help if I give you a little background because my background was originally in performance. I was a professional dancer for 10 years.
Oh, right.
And growing up, I had a terror of exams and later on also auditions.
Right.
I'm very familiar and it's a knowing in the body with the symptoms of performance anxiety. So it seemed when I became a hypnotherapist that it was working in this area, performance anxiety, seemed a natural fit for me because I've been there and been able to make those changes. And after I qualified, I became a performance coach in the corporate sector way over 20 years ago,
Right.
helping top executives who had fallen behind in their remits due to stressful lives, maybe outside of their work, and they were unable to perform at their best. I was brought in to help them
Right.
with my skills, and some of the areas which are familiar across all areas,
Mm.
including sport. One of the biggest ones is fear of failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Fear of public speaking, and especially in the corporate sector when necessarily someone's been promoted and who didn't necessarily come from, maybe they were in a team and they suddenly have been, now they're a manager
Yeah. Yeah.
and they have to use different skills, and being able to present to the board is a completely different thing altogether.
Absolutely.
And that crosses across things like auditions,
Yeah.
exams, interviews as well. And the fear of not being good enough, they're all interlinked, aren't they? Uh,
Yes.
and fear of rejection, which I believe is all the fears you could possibly mention. Fear of rejection is comes into play because if, what happens when you fail, then you're
Yeah.
quite often rejected.
Yeah.
Uh, so all of these fears come. I see quite a lot with overthinking, overwhelm, self-doubt, and panic. Um, Talking of football, I have worked with athletes along the way.
Yeah.
Um, Two Premier League football players who I can't name, and more recently with equestrians on Team GB with their performance in the arena. Um,
That's
so
really exciting, Maxine. You've just brought so much out there that,
oh,
um,
wow.
firstly, if you've had the experience of having to perform and know what that feels like and that pressure and that spotlight,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it helps you help someone else because you've walked the walk,
Oh,
know
it,
how that feels, and when you've overcome it, um, you're much more clear on the techniques, and you're giving from a place of absolute knowledge, aren't you? And I think mentioning there kind of the fear of failure, fear of rejection, not being good enough, they're
mm,
little things that we're dealing with every day anyway in relationships and in so many areas.
mm,
But this is just a spotlight of all of that, isn't it? And I mean, I see it every day coming through my door in just slightly different forms, I guess. Um,
yes, right.
really recently, I had someone who was doing karate, and their tutor had said to them, you're so anxious, you're not fluid enough, you're not going with it enough, and therefore you're not going to pass your exam, and that's tough, but we worked with it. And then, the joy, and I'm sure you've experienced of that, of getting the text message, yes, I passed, or whatever it was, I got
Yeah.
condition, um,
Yeah.
or driving test. I mean, isn't that one of the most common ones? The fear of failing a driving test. And I had someone recently who had said, I'm just never going to pass it. I'm never going to pass it. And they sailed through first time, and it felt like so great to be working
Yeah.
with those fears and overcoming them.
And it's amazing to be there to support them on that journey.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, then they can do anything. If they that
Yeah.
it gives them confidence. So yes, working along these anxieties, as you say, they're across the board in all aspects of life. It doesn't have to be performing in an opera
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
on the world stage of football or the Olympics. It can be day to day going
Yeah.
to your job or in,
Yeah.
as you say, your relationship. Am I good enough?
Yeah.
Am I doing my best?
Mm.
And fear of getting things wrong, especially if someone's been in a relationship that might have been or abusive or
Yeah.
seen family that might have been that way. So sorry, I got a bit off
Yeah, no,
track.
that's interesting. No, but it is all interrelated, and I think as hypnotherapists, we are working with things where the fundamental core roots are quite similar,
Yeah,
and therefore sometimes the treatment can be quite similar. The approach you take can be quite similar, though they've come in for something which seems perhaps very different. And what high standards we set ourselves now. I think
absolutely. Yeah.
we can't get it wrong. Maybe, I wonder, maybe it's because of social media and the spotlight people have on themselves. The fear of humiliating yourself or getting it wrong is bigger because if you get it wrong, you get it wrong very publicly.
That's right. And I truly believe it all comes under the perfectionism,
Yeah, yeah,
which the need to be perfect or else.
yeah, yeah,
In case I get it wrong, with the consequences of not being right and not being perfect. And
yeah,
of course, we're humans,
yeah.
and there is no such thing as a perfect human.
No.
Uh,
And we learn from those mistakes, don't we?
well,
You can't
that's
learn without, I often use the metaphor, the Erickson metaphor of the baby falling down as it's learning to walk until it gets it right. It's
yes, I
true,
love it.
and that baby doesn't sit on the floor going, oh, this is too hard. I'm not going to keep trying to get up again. They keep going
Yes,
until they get it
yes,
right. Whereas an
yes,
adult, you make one mistake and you're like, oh, I'm
right.
a failure,
Yeah.
this.
Babies don't go, oh, walking's not for me.
Yeah, yeah. So
Uh, yeah.
it's interesting. So what sort of techniques do you use with clients? Obviously a lot, but maybe a couple of things
Yeah.
you find.
One of my favorites, alongside using hypnotherapy during sessions, um, I also use EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, which is a combination of NLP or Western psychology and the use of very gently tapping on some very specific, important acupoints.
Yeah,
And the technique of using the acupoints has been around for thousands of
yeah,
years across the world. And this has been researched and proven time and again across the
yeah,
world, how the parts of the brain that are employed when we are stressed and anxious and traumatized to release those emotions, to calm our nervous systems down, and to also calm down the emotional distress at the
yeah.
time. It is quite complex, even though it's quite easy to teach.
Yes, yeah,
Right, and that's why one of the main reasons why I like to use it, because you can't give your client a bag of needles, and an
yeah,
acupuncturist couldn't
yeah,
do that and
yeah,
say,
yeah,
do this at home until our next session. So I like to teach my clients how to use the basics of EFT to reduce their anxiety before a performance or a competition,
yeah,
because of course I'm not going to be there to help them on
yeah.
the spot, and also to maintain the results they get during the session.
Yes, yeah. I think it's what's so wonderful about hypnotherapy is that the things we can bolt onto it. So we
Absolutely.
do a hypnotherapy session, but bolt on some CBT, some NLP, some EFT, and you've
Yeah,
got, it makes it a very rich resource, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
It's sort of not the same, but something I give people to take away to do when they're going into that situation is creating a positive resource state. So thinking about something that where they felt good, where they achieved, and then anchoring it by pressing their thumb and finger together. And
Yes.
I've even had clients say, "Oh, I saw someone else doing that," and I thought, "Oh, you know that one too." You know, it's
Yeah.
giving them things. Obviously, you're trying to retrain the mind in the session, but it's giving them resources that they can use for themselves that give them confidence too, and that
Hmm.
remove the stress in that moment, um, which I find really interesting. And rehearsal techniques. I was fascinated by some research I read that was done at Harvard University, where they had people electrodes on people's brains so they could monitor them, and they were playing the piano. And then they got people to imagine playing the piano, the same piece in their mind, and they were monitoring it. And exactly the same neural pathways were being followed as to whether they were really playing the piano or imagining playing the piano. And I think this is fundamental in how doing some sort of rehearsal techniques with
Absolutely.
clients enforces their confidence because you're actually building the neural pathways, but also they've already done it.
That's
They do
right.
it again and again.
That's right. And interestingly, you bring that up. It's one of the key, mental rehearsal is one of the key techniques I use with my equestrians because
Uh-huh.
they have a test that they're going to do in front of judges or a
Yeah,
number of judges if it's an international test. And I use it myself because I
yeah.
don't know whether you know, but I do dog agility.
Oh,
So yeah, so we're given so many minutes to learn a course
right.
of 20 obstacles. You have to learn where the numbers are, learn the course, how you're going to do it with your dog, and the dog never gets to see it. So, in those few minutes between looking at that course,
Yeah,
deciding what you're going to do, it's like learning a dance
yeah,
routine.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then you've got to teach that routine
yeah,
to your dog who's never
yeah,
seen it before.
yeah,
But
yeah,
in the middle of the arena is a judge.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's it's
yeah,
all fears in one.
yeah,
And also, of course, there's only one winner.
yeah, yeah,
And there might be there's a crowd looking
yeah,
and
yeah,
watching to
yeah,
see
yeah, yeah,
how you're getting on or not.
yeah.
So the mental rehearsal is essential
Yeah.
for anything.
Yeah, I think so too. Anything you're trying to do. I also use kind of the what's sometimes called the cinemata technique or the fast phobia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, with that you're watching it, but you're changing it because you rewind the images and then you watch again, you rewind and that reframes it, and then you give it a piece of music, and then that piece of music becomes again your comfort blanket going
Mhm.
into that situation. Um, and I guess ways of releasing the fears as well. You know, there are various visualizations you can
Yeah.
do to release fears, but building self-esteem, and
Mhm.
it's just there's such a range of things we can do. You know, it's incredible the toolkit we have.
Mhm. Yes, the tools that we have and we give to our clients can help unscramble some of the trance states they've got themselves into accidentally. You know?
Exactly, and I think maybe if they are self-esteem issues and things like that in the background, they might have come to you to be able to pass a driving test or do well in a particular sports performance, but their
Mhm.
whole sense of self feels better at the end of it. And I think
Yeah,
that's wonderful because we're getting into core
yeah,
issues.
yeah.
Oh gosh, really exciting. I could talk to you for hours, Maxine, but I think we need to call it a day there. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with me on that. So, Maxine, Bryce, thank you. And
You.
you'll see some other of our videos in the future that UKCHO will be producing. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.